Papertrail has been a game I've been looking forward to for absolutely ages. Created by a new indie studio called Newfangled Games, containing the creators of a puzzle game I absolutely adore, and that is Hue. There is a cool fact, and that is the game I first fully did on my main channel, so you can probably guess why I've been excited for this one. Now, to start this off, of course, this is early access, and I want to thank Newfangled so much for gifting me with an early key to take a look around this game and share it all with you. I will be leaving links around in the description for all of you to access, where you can go and wishlist the game now on Steam, and it will be coming out on many other platforms such as PS4, 5, Xbox, Switch, and mobile through Netflix, which is pretty cool. So thank you again, Newfangled, and let's go on a journey through Papertrail. There will be spoilers ahead. Because it's from the developers of Hue, which is one of my all-time favorite games. So it looks like drag the paper to unfold.
There's a crumbling old cottage, home to two old fuddy-duddy parents.
Oh, I love this art style already.
Who had just been accepted into university. The problem? Well, they didn't want her to go.
Oh, I've clearly folded that wrong. Oh, right. I'm already messing up.
It's a letter, saying I'm running away.
Oh no, where's she going?
At least I was, until the storm started. Now, I guess we're stuck here until the rain clears. So we may as well get to know each other.
Oh, that is awesome. This is so awesome. I'm gonna guess... no. Oh, there we go.
18 years old, astrophysicist in training. Hobbies include journaling, origami, and bending the space-time continuum.
Papertrail takes us on a journey through the character Paige. We're introduced to her seeing that she wants to run away to university as her parents wouldn't let her go. However, things stop her plan and a storm is brewing. It causes some destruction around the area, and this serves as the main tutorial area. Her parents ask us to find out if the people around us are okay, introducing us now to movement and the basic function of the paper folding. Our first person is the fisherman. They're stuck across a broken bridge with no way to go or to get across. We're shown how to move the paper, creating a new path, fixing the bridge. Our next job is to find Aunt Maud, who has unfortunately got herself stuck behind a tree. But again, folding the paper over, and we can get to her, and she asks us to go down to the lighthouse to check on the keeper. And something pretty cool is we're able to find our first origami collectible. We then head back to our parents, who invite us back for dinner.
Finally, everyone's asleep. Now, where were we? Mom and Dad wanted me to stay in Southfold, to settle down here. Always dreamt of bigger things, you know? Creating my own path. When I got the university offer, I thought it was finally my big break. But I wasn't allowed to go. They were worried it was too dangerous out there, in the real world.
Oh, look how beautiful this art style is. If I'm taking some time, I'm like taking it all in. I just absolutely love it.
Journey ahead to the big city. I just hope that when I graduate, they'll be there, you know? But for now, I've just got to focus on getting out of here.
Oh. We've got a suitcase. Oh, there we go. My brain is not working today.
Is that Dad snoring in the other room? Well, that's my cue to leave.
After now escaping our house, we encounter what seems to be a forest spirit, which is what introduces us to the hints function. Now, I really like the layout of how these hints are shown to you, as it shows you a slider and it shows you the sequence of folding the paper, instead of something like showing an arrow that's outright guiding you. This still requires you to do a little bit more thinking. We're able to use the paper to form a stone circle pattern in the ground, and it opens up a doorway to the mountains. Here we meet a hiker who seems to have got themselves stuck, and we are introduced to a new element of the puzzles. These blocks allow you to walk on them only when they're connected to a matching block, kind of like dominoes. This really makes your brain work, as with these puzzles you now have to think about the different angles and pathways you may have to go. Because of these blocks stopping you, they've created a form of fixed way that you have to go, and without them, you can't progress. We then encounter a rock where you can only move it if you have a space behind you, creating a little bit of restriction, but nothing a little bit of paper can't fix. You now have to think of multiple pathways you can go to get around these rocks, and it's really, really clever trying just that little start to get your brain working for the future. We eventually find the hiker again, and we complete another pattern revealing the moonlight and creating a new bridge for us to reach the other side. Our next puzzle teaches us keys, which is a classic in any puzzle game, but getting them and using them is super simple. We see the hiker has made it to the top, and we go through a puzzle to get to them, bringing together each element we have been taught in this section. And this is an awesome way to do it. We get shown how also changing the paper we're on can also help us accessing other pieces, which is super clever. We make it to the top, and the hiker advises us to stay the night so the swamps that we're heading to aren't too dangerous.
We found a quiet corner of the cave and settled in for the night. My new friend promised to deliver my letter home, now that he knew the way back. As I lay by the fire, I fell into a deep sleep and dreamt of home. It was a cool winter morning, and the sun was rising over South Fork. Two twins had arrived earlier that night. A perfect girl called Paige, and a stinker called Oscar.
Aww, so sweet.
Inseparable. But I'll have to tell you more another time. It's already morning. We packed up our things and put out the last embers of the fire. After saying goodbye, I set off into the swamps alone. Hopefully there's no alligators.
We encounter two people fishing in a boat for frogs. However, it seems like we're scaring them away, and they don't like us very much. Here, we get introduced to the next mechanic. These are wooden moving platforms, and we're able to move Paige onto them as she is standing on them, allowing us to move in the direction specified. One cool thing about these is that when you fold the paper over, for example, you can then move the platform over onto it, which, to be honest, I forgot a fair few times. And when I realized it, I was like, yeah. Both in disappointment with myself and a huge relief that I'd finally figured it out. This section overall is really nice, involving simple puzzles implementing what we've learned so far, of course, and the numbered domino blocks, the moving platforms, and rock switches. We can also see moving platforms containing numbers 2, which added a bit of a challenge at the beginning, but you get used to it. And in addition to that, moving platforms made of stone, which you cannot move while you're standing on them, which kind of added a bit more restriction, but it just took a little tiny bit more thinking, and you were there. Over our time here, we see the frog kids, and they're still fishing for frogs, of course. Maybe we'll have to try it one day. It does look kind of relaxing. Now, remember how I said that you can move platforms across different pieces of paper? You've got to remember I am quite silly, and on this last section, I completely forgot. I completely forgot that, and you'll see how long I took just to figure out that I had to move the platform over. Like, this is what I love about puzzle games, is that they make you think up these huge, crazy solutions to the puzzle, but realistically, it is just staring you in the face, and I think that's definitely the first sign you are playing a good game. Eventually reaching the Frog Kids, they lead Paige to a ladder leading on to the next section.
The pair led me to a large tree reaching out of the mangroves. As I climbed into the branches, they yelled that I'd forgotten something. I looked down at their grinning faces and was transported back. My brother Oscar and I played every day together. I'd make little paper animals, and he'd paint these amazing pictures. You'd see in his eyes, he'd get lost in his paintings. And then, one day, he just disappeared. It was like he slipped through the cracks of the world, right in front of me. Does that make sense? Anyway, sounds like another storm's rolling in. I read there should be a village north of these trees. If we hurry, we might be able to make it before sunrise.
The next section leads us up into the treetops where we meet a keen bird watcher, who again doesn't like us very much as we are disturbing the birds. This is also where we are introduced to ladders. Now this section is so clever as we're able to connect multiple ladders together to create a path there. But there are also spinning platforms that we can use too. For example, in this first puzzle, it is used to move a rock out of the way of the ladder. We see the bird watcher and they tell us about the doors, and these act as a pathway between two. It kind of reminded me of another puzzle game known as Monument Valley. I used to play it constantly on my phone, and that required you to alternate the environment and travel through these doors, tricking you as most of the levels were optical illusions. Now this is a really cool feature, but unlike Monument Valley, the doors aren't already there and you have to do a little bit more thinking, and that's what makes it much more challenging. You have to make both doors visible as they have their own patterns on them. Once you show these patterns together, the doors will open, creating the pathway for you. And this creates a lot of ways that you can go. You can move the doors, of course, in any different way you want to, but it gets you thinking quite a bit, especially when more doors are introduced. Overall, I really enjoyed this section quite a lot, as it throws a lot at you, but they all blend so well together. And I felt really challenged, and I think I prefer that rather than slowly introducing things, along with the spinning platforms, there are also ones that allow you to step on one part but not walk across. This was mostly used to transport rocks to the other side, and it also makes you create a new pathway for you to cross yourself. The final puzzle leads us to the bird watcher in a huge nest, where they're planning to sell the eggs on the black market. I knew they were suspicious all along. However, the bird comes and we take a tumble.
Inside the nest, we nervously glanced around. Something didn't feel right. As we searched for the way down, a shadow crept over us. Before I knew what hit me, I was tumbling through the branches below. As I fell, the present gave way to the past. I remembered the first disappearance. Oscar had vanished. Everyone was worried sick. We searched the village high and low until finally, Dad found him playing with bullfrogs down by the water. How he got there? Nobody knew. Everyone was just pleased he was safe. For now. Several hours later, I finally came around. The rain had eased, and I could feel the warmth of the sun. A village was just up ahead, a sense of anticipation hanging in the air. Maybe there's a spare bed for the night.
We wake up now in a very autumnal area, where we can talk to various family members that look like they're setting up for a festival. One of them asks us to go and find the elder. However, the grandson of one of the family has unfortunately caused a bit of an accident and has started a fire with some firework. We can find the elder under a bit of paper and he thanks us. However, this also creates a pathway for the fire to spread and starts the festival a bit early.
As the villagers gathered round the fire to begin the festivities, the elder took me to one side. He leaned in and whispered that while trapped between, he'd seen unimaginable things. That I should be careful to prevent the same thing happening to me. The party carried on around me as I laid down to rest by the fire. Before long, the laughter of the villagers faded away. I awoke in a dream, adrift in what felt like limbo. Is this what the elder spoke of? A familiar presence waited at the edge of the world and beckoned for me to follow. I awoke to the cool touch of raindrops on my face. It was morning. The whole village was awake. Had they even slept? They offered some frog tea, which I sipped reluctantly. With my mind still swimming from the night before, I bid them farewell. That wasn't quite the relaxing night's sleep I was hoping for.
We wake up and the elder warns us about our power, making sure that we don't do anything bad with it. Heading on, we're now in what seems to be the outside of some ruins, and we meet a super friendly excavator. In this section, we are introduced to the use of statues. Now, these statues can be used like rocks, for example, to press down switches, but unlike them, paper is unable to fold past them, meaning that we have to move them accordingly so that we can fold the paper far enough. This definitely created a brand new challenge, which we haven't seen before, since we have free movement of the paper the whole time. It really changes up your strategy now, as well as getting to the goal. We have this thing to move out of our way. Now, this did stump me for quite a while, and it was the first time I really went to the hints for help. Since I was focusing way too much on moving the statue away, it really wasn't as easy as that, and it's super clever. You think, okay, the statue is just in front of the exit, let's move it out of the way, but no, sometimes to get to the exit, you have to move the statue a completely different way from where you think to actually fold and get to the exit yourself. And this really made you think a lot. And I think this is definitely the first bit where I felt challenged. Overall, this section is definitely one of the best so far, as it well and truly got me stuck for most of the time, and it felt challenging, which is what you really want from a puzzle game. It's like, so far we've gotten a nice slow introduction into the game, introducing us to the basics, and now as soon as we reach that halfway point of the autumnal area, it's now amped up the challenge for us, and I got really excited moving on to the next part. We managed to meet the excavator again, and there's a huge door blocking our way.
An ancient door blocked our path forwards. With a low rumbling, the stone plinths shook and then slowly parted. Peering into the small opening, a sense of claustrophobia took me back. After the incident, we were confined to the house. Mom and Dad were too worried for us to leave. As the hours dragged by, it felt like the walls were closing in around us. We stared longingly out the window, and I asked Oscar how he vanished. He said, if I promised not to tell, he'd show me. Our eyes adjusted to the darkness. Was this what she'd been searching for all these years? I offered to stay and help gather artifacts, but she insisted I carry on without her.
We say our goodbyes to them and we're now in the temple. We meet a bunch of kids, I'm going to dub them the bad kids, who seem to be just chilling, and this brings us into the new element of this section. On the floor, there is now a square emitting an orange energy, and our job now is to connect the tracks together to move this energy to its path, which in this case is going to power the door blocking our way. This was a really interesting mechanic to have in the game, as you are required to create specific patterns on the floor, while also moving yourself out of the way. It can get you a bit confused sometimes, but I think I got used to it fairly quickly. I was stuck on one of the puzzles for a bit though, I have to admit. One thing about us though is once everything is powered up, it stays in the state it is in, so you don't have to keep it all folded over when you're trying to get to the goal in the end. We come across the bad kids again and we have to connect another pattern together. After unfolding one of the kids, they mention how everything was dark, which gives us an insight into how and what this power does to people. Now comes the real challenge of this area, and that's the introduction of energy statues and moving platforms. Now, to start off, these energy statues can be placed on switches to send energy through the tracks to the final bit. Now, having these along with having to line up the tracks can get a little complicated since we can't fold the paper as far now because of the statue. But since we were kind of used to it already, I kind of found it alright getting used to it. Now, the statues were alright, but it's when we got to the moving platforms that I felt a little more stumped, as these ones have to be powered by energy. It's not like the spinning platforms or the arrow moving platforms we had in the other area. And because of this introduction, I kind of, with already having to line up the tracks and moving the statues, I feel like I had a bit too much to focus all on at once. Now, I know I said I liked it amping up the difficulty, but I don't know what it was with me. I think it's just probably how my brain works, to be honest. That I just had way too much to like try and match up, considering I was trying to match the tracks to reach the goal. I was trying to keep the statue powered, and then of course I had to use the moving platforms to also power up that. Yeah, and then unlike powering up the main power bits where we can get the platforms to goal, when you take the power off the platforms, they will go back to where they were. And sometimes just focusing on all of this, a lot of the time I forgot that the platforms could actually move me and transport me to the other side, but because I think my brain just went all silly at some point and just left me stuck on quite a few of the puzzles. On our final puzzle now, we can see the kids over on the other side, and this one really tested me, but overall this section was a huge challenge, and I think it was just for me a little bit too much to remember, but I still enjoyed the challenge that came with it. I'll take that as a big win. One of the kids accidentally smashes the beautiful stained glass window, but luckily that does mean we have a good way for us to leave this temple and carry on with our journey.
I stepped over the broken glass towards the window. Those kids might be trouble, but they knew how to find a quick exit. Clambering through the makeshift opening, I said my farewells and began my climb down to the ocean below. Looking back at their faces, I could picture Oscar amongst them, as if nothing had happened. Growing up, though, It was just the two of us, so we had to make do with each other. He'd show me how to create these doorways, and together, we'd sneak away on adventures to far-off places. Mom and Dad never even knew we left our room. Once I'd gotten down to safe ground, I spotted a sailboat tied up nearby. With the city on the horizon, I sailed off across the ocean. Did you hear that? I could have sworn I heard someone calling for help.
We have now made it to the fishing village, and we meet a mariner who seems to be a little confused and stuck in the sea. He's trying to get back to his wife, but with no success so far. This is where we are introduced to levers and lights. The basic premise of the puzzles here are to pull the lever to turn on a light, and we now have to redirect this light towards the end to power up the platforms that lead us to our goal. This is kind of similar to the tracks in the temple, however, this time we have to use prisms to deflect the light in the right direction instead of matching up a set track. Once again, of course, it wouldn't be a level without statues coming into play. Of course, you have your classic statues, but we now have new ones which hold shields, which can actually reflect the light in a certain direction. Now, I really enjoyed figuring these puzzles out here, as unlike the temple where you had the set track, you've got to get your brain whirring a bit. Sometimes, especially with the prisms, you've got to experiment a bit with the direction they move light, because when you fold them over, they might change direction. So going through all these combinations and trying to figure out the perfect pattern for the light to go through was really hard, but really fun in the same way, as it felt like I was learning myself as well. I did find myself checking the hints here a few times, as again I would get myself confused a fair amount of times. But eventually we meet the mariner again, and his wife is out looking for him. We help with the final puzzle, creating a path to her.
Stepping foot into the fishing village, the seafarer's wife came running. They hadn't seen each other in so long, but she'd never given up hope. They invited me in, and we shared stories over dinner. She told of her worry. That first night her husband didn't come home. And I spoke of Oscar, and the day he too disappeared. We'd taken one of our many trips far away, but Oscar wanted to go even further this time. Crossing the river, he lost his footing and slipped. Before I knew what happened, he was gone. And that was the last time I saw my brother. I like to think he's waiting for me. On the other side, you know? After talking long into the night, the tide lowered, and a path opened up across the sea to the city. I said my farewells and made the short walk across to the harbor. According to this map, the university is just ahead. We finally made it.
We do unfortunately hear about the accident with Paige's brother, which is really sad. But we have now made it to the town before the university, and here we meet an old lady and a young kid who seems to have stolen her briefs, and they are running away. Here, folding paper works a little different. Now, when you fold a corner, for example, the corner on the opposite will also fold over. So now you're working with two pieces at the same time. At first, I was slightly confused, but I found it so much easier just to focus on the page you were on, rather than focusing on what the other page was doing at the time, unless you needed to cross over onto it. This last area basically introduces this one feature and focuses on utilizing each element we've come across for the whole game. This includes the domino blocks, the doors, and the ladders. There was this one puzzle with 4 vertical pieces with multiple doors and ladders, and this generally got me for a while. As I went through the doors, I was like, oh, now I'm in the wrong place. And it took me a while to realize I had to go near the end and come back on myself, then go back again, and it gets you. It gets you thinking, how did I not figure that out before? We meet the kid again across the bridge and they get away. However, we are shown the final element of the puzzles, and that is portal. This is a feature I didn't expect to come across, but it was super cool to use. Fitting in with the lights and the prisms mixed with the multiple pieces of folding at once makes for a great challenge, as now you did have to focus on multiple pieces of paper at the same time. Similar to the puzzle before with the doors, imagine it now with portals. However, now while getting us across, we had to somehow redirect the light to lower the bridges, and I spent a good while on this. And the puzzle after includes a statue that's already on a folded piece of paper, so the goal is to reach there. But I ended up thinking way too far ahead, and I thought we had to go straight there, but no, it surprised me, and I spent ages trying to align these portals to lower the bridge to get me there. The final puzzle once again brought in doors, statues, lights, and portals, and I did spend a very good while on this, which I really like. As for a final puzzle, you don't want it to be easy at all. Like, I spent I so long just trying to redirect this light, but I eventually got there, and we meet the lady and the kid who's finally been caught, luckily right outside the university. We made it.
After a long journey from Southfold to the big city, I'd finally made it to university. Just in time for my first day. Too tired to fully unpack, I lay on the bed to rest my eyes. Suddenly, my alarm woke me with a start. It was already morning, and lectures were starting any minute. I got up and rushed to class. The halls were full of new students, all nervously excited for their first day. The lecture hall was so big, and you'd never guess who my professor was. I got lost in my studies, and before I knew it, years had passed. Between assignments, I wrote home, but could tell my parents were still upset I'd left. And then, the big graduation day came. I'd passed with distinction. Diploma in hand, I looked out into the crowd, and I saw Mom and Dad. We talked for hours. They were sorry that they were so strict after Oscar disappeared, and sad I was going to live so far away. I told them I'm not as far away as they think. A quick fold in space and time, and I'd be home. They looked at me confused. I'll visit soon, I said.
And there you have it. That's the story of Papertrail. And what an absolutely lovely, sweet game. To me, I think the story was just right. It was nice seeing Paige go on her journey towards the university while also hearing about her brother's accident, which was really sad. Now, going through each area and meeting the different people that are there made it quite nice, and seeing how some may come off as mean, they still somewhat helped us along in our journey. Now, you may also have seen in the ending, there was a little Easter egg showing Hugh at the university, of course from their previous game, which I confirmed is the same university from Hugh, which is super duper cool. One thing I love about the storytelling in this is that you actually interact with it. And it's not just some still cutscene that you're watching and listening to. You are actually following along with it, and it keeps you engaged with it, which I think is such a great idea. As you feel like you'll feel like you're part of the story, and you're not just there to complete puzzles. Well, to be fair, the story scenes are a bit of a puzzle themselves as well. But overall, I am super impressed. It's short, sweet, and beautiful. Now, firstly, of course, you cannot miss the lovely art style throughout this game. Going through each part of the story and each section, you have to stay there for a bit and just admire the work that has gone into all of it. I find it hard speaking my thoughts on graphics, but there is something about this style that makes you feel so relaxed and so calm. Together with this, you of course have the soundtrack in the background, done by vocalist Claudie Macula. I'm really hoping I said that right. Since the soundtrack isn't out yet at the time of making this, I can't play you the tracks directly, but let me show you a snippet of the puzzle with the tracks playing just to show you what it's like. There's just something so relaxing about it. Throughout this whole game, you just feel so immersed, and that's what I like to look for in a puzzle game. Something you can just sit calmly playing for hours. So, Papertrail takes you on the journey of Paige, heading to university, mixing with multiple puzzle elements which do a great job and challenging you at every section, which is what a puzzle game should do. The elements featured all work perfectly together until the final stretch, and it's topped off with a super sweet ending accompanied by beautiful visuals and sound. I must recommend this game to you as much as I can, and also if you haven't checked out that other game, Hue, I really recommend it. It's one of my favorites. Papertrail is a 10 out of 10 for me. So thank you all for watching and reaching the end. I hope you enjoyed the journey and would love to stick around for more in the future. The next Bioshock video, I promise, will be coming, but it will be a while as there is a load to cover in that game. I just want to say another huge thanks to Newfangled and good luck with the launch. Make sure you go and check out the game now on your favorite platform. And yeah, that's what I thought about Papertrail, and I'll see you all soon.